So I want to help get you started on the employee project, this multiple classes. So I've got my driver downloaded. I'm not going to do this whole thing with you. I'm going to have you do it, but I do want to do the employee class with you. I think if you can get the employee class, you can probably get the rest of this on your own. So, yeah, especially with if you compare it to like the fishing class. So go ahead and pause the video and get all this in. You want to make sure you include your date.h, your address.h. I have IOStream. Then I just have a class employee. And I have the default of public and private. But if I look at my example over here, our name should actually be protected. All of this should be protected data. So I'm going to put protected instead of private. And this means the only piece of information there is our string name. Okay, that's not quite entirely correct because if you look, we also have date and an address, which is part of our class. So they don't ever put the relationships in, but we know they are because we have this pointing here and we have this pointing here. This means date, this is an aggregation situation, so I know I'm going to have a pointer. No, I'm going to have a pointer to an address. This is my aggregation. Sorry, I get those mixed up because this one's the composition. So my employee has, maybe I think it's a start date. I'm going to call it date. I'm just going to call it date. You can do whatever date it is. So that's a composition, and my address is our aggregation. So I'm going to say address star address. There it is. Okay, so now I've got three pieces of data that I need to define. So in my employee class, I should stop moving this window because it's probably driving you nuts. Sorry about that. I'm going to do our constructor. So we say employee, and we have string name, int year, int month, and int day. Okay, now I've got to define all three of these pieces of information. Okay, name is easy because it's just a private variable. So I could say string, not string, name, and name right here refers to this variable. And then in parentheses, I can put whatever my parameter is. In this case, it's the same, but you can potentially have different names here to keep track of your parameters. I'm lazy, I like to have the same, but that's okay. Next thing I need is I need to instantiate this date. If I don't, it's going to give me an error because this date has three parameters it has to take, but I can't do it here. I have to do it in line. So I'm going to come up here, and just like I did with the name, I put name and then I put in parentheses the information it was expecting. I'm going to do the same thing with date. Date, and then I'm going to put the information the date is expecting, which, if you look, is year, month, and day. So I'm going to say year, month, day. And I'm now on the other page. Let me move this over for you. There you go. Okay, so that finishes off my two pieces of information, but still there's a third one. We don't have any information in our constructor as far as the parameters go to be able to instantiate this. But I still have to give it a value. Since it's a pointer, I can actually set it equal to null pointer, meaning it's not going to point anywhere. Okay, constructor is now done. Next thing we're going to do is our I don't know, how about our destructor? I'm going to do, our destructor looks exactly like our constructor, with the exception it has the little tilde in front of it. I'm going to do this one out of line. Okay, so that's what it looks like, but we have to specify that it's part of the employee class. So I got to put my scope resolution operator in there. Okay, what I have to do is this is called whenever your class goes out of scope, or if your class gets deleted or something like that. This gets automatically called. You never have to call the destructor. And since I'm going to be creating an address, that means I have to delete an address. But I can't just delete the address. The reason why is, what if they don't have the address set? Because right here it's null pointer, so this would crash my program. So I need a little if statement in here, and I accidentally put a bracket, sorry. I'm going to say if the address exists, then go ahead and delete it. If the address doesn't exist, this code's not going to do anything. Okay, so there's my destructor. Next thing we need is a set address to be able to allow the user to set the address. So let's go ahead and put in our function prototype. Void set address takes a string, what is it, street? Now I don't remember, sorry guys. Street and city. Alright, copy this part, paste it in down below. I like my methods down low. If you like to leave it in line, you can actually just put an open close parentheses and leave it there. Employee, but I do have to add in my scope resolution operator and my opening and close squiggly brackets. Okay, all we have to do is instantiate my data. Since this is a pointer, we don't have to instantiate it in the constructor. We could if we wanted to, but we don't have to. We can instantiate this whenever we have the information. So if you remember back to our pointer notation, we use the new keyword to instantiate a pointer. And this takes in street and city. There we go. So there is my set address. Okay, last method. Let's kind of space this out a little bit, make it nice and pretty. Okay, last method is our friend operator, our extraction operator. So I'm going to put in friend, ostream, ampersand operator. The operator I'm overloading is the less than sign. That requires an ostream parameter and an employee parameter. Okay, now so this is going to be almost the same on every single one of yours. The difference is you'll want to change this out to be whatever the current class is. I'm going to copy just up to that point, because whenever we declare it out of line, we don't have the keyword friend. So paste that in. At this point, I have to declare my parameters. So ostream I always name out, and I'll show you why in just a sec. Employee, you can name this whatever you want. I think the UML diagram says me. I like to do it E sometimes, E for employee, but whatever you want to call that is fine, so long as you call it consistently. Okay, this is not a member of the class. So anytime we use any of our data, we have to use me to access it. Now this is just going to be like a cout statement, except for instead of saying cout that writes to the console, we're just doing out, and that's why I name it out. So here I'm going to say I want to display, let's see, what do I want to display? I'm going to scroll down in this. I want to display their name, their street, and their city. Guess that doesn't have the city. I don't know where the city is. I'll put the city in. Rest of them do? No, I just have the address in that example, but let's put that in. Out, name, do an inline. Next I'm going to do, what did I say next? Oh, it doesn't matter which. Start date, we'll do the date. Out, not cout, out. Okay, now, so long as we've overloaded this particular operator, it will display this information correctly. So that means in our date class, we're going to have an overloaded extraction operator. Okay, the last one is the address. We don't know that this address exists until they call this set address. So I need a little if statement in here just in case. If the address exists, then go ahead and add that to our extraction operator. I can't spell address. Okay, so that means if it doesn't exist, it's just going to leave the address off. Now remember, this operator returns a stream. So after we've added everything to out, we have to return out. That way, whenever you do a cout statement for the employee, it will display all of this information. Okay, I hope that gave you a pretty good help. I'll give you a couple other hints when you do the rest of them. Let's see. Let's go back to our date class is not an inheritance situation, so you don't have to include your employee. Instead, your employee includes your date class. So this one's actually going to be pretty straightforward. You'll just have a regular old class with a constructor with your month, date, and year. There's our constructor and an extraction operator. Other than that, this one's done. Same with your address. That's just a regular old class with a constructor and an extraction operator. Where it starts getting tricky is in the waged employee and the salaried employee. Don't forget to use your colon to specify that this has an inheritance situation. And when you do your constructor, instead of putting name and date and all of these things individually, you'll just say colon employee here. And employee takes all four parameters, so that takes care of all of that information in one tiny little use of the constructor. Then all you have to do is put your colon in after your employee, put all that information in, and put in all the new information that's in whatever that class happens to be. All right, well, I hope this helps. Let me know if you run into any more issues. Please send me an email, and we will see you. Well, we won't see you in class because of the coronavirus, but we'll see you online. How's that? I'll send out a message to figure out what's going on and what we're doing next Thursday.